Bonjour, it's Théo. After making a lot of videos about Paris and the French culture, I never talked about the school system in France. Maybe because I'm not at school anymore, I'm an adult and I'm a full-time content creator, but today it's time to talk about the education system in France and the problem also around it. By the way, don't hesitate to share your opinions in the comments. I think the education system is different in every country, so it's always interesting to share your opinion about it. The good thing in France, and I think that it's one of the best things we have, is that education is mostly free. You can have an education that is pretty good in the public system. For my little story about it, I was always in public school. Even in university, it was free. You can find many problems because they don't have a lot of budget if it's free, but you can still have a good education. We have multiple levels of scholarship in France. We have the maternelle, that is maybe like the kindergarten in English. It's like a preschool. It's from 3 years old to 6 years old. Then you have the école élémentaire, the elementary school. It's for 5 years. Then it gets complicated because we call it college, but it's the middle school. So in English, it doesn't mean the same, but the college here is the middle school and it lasts for 4 years. And then we have the high school for 3 years and then the university or the private business school or anything after high school. The good thing in the French education system is that we have a lot of different fields that we talk about. History, geography, mathematics, French, different languages also like Spanish, English. We have many things, but it's also a problem because when you want to talk about many stuff, we have really long days of school, especially I remember when I was in high school or also at the end of middle school, I had like 8 different classes in the same day from 8 to 6 p.m. and it was really tiring at the end. I think it's not the best way to learn when you have so many different things in the day. I think that's also why the French school system is not the best at all in Europe and in the world. It was like the 26th or 25 in the world education ranking. So it's not the best, definitely not the best. Also, when you have to talk about many different fields, you can't spend the time some student needs to learn better, you know. When you are late in a class, when you are late at learning something, you won't have the time to work on it perfectly. And if you are late on a discipline or on a field, you will just lost it and it will be really difficult for you to get back on track. And I remember some English class when you want to learn a new language as English in France. I remember people who were in the class not talking at all. They were not like making some mess, but they were just so lost because they don't understand anything. And when it's like your 4th year of learning English, if you don't have the basis, you can't learn anything after it. So it's really difficult to get back on track when you are in the French education system and you are late at learning something. That's one of the big problems. And on the other end, if you are good at school, you will feel bored because the learning system won't be fast enough for you. So it's always in the middle, it's always average and you can't have the perfect education for everyone. But in France, you can find also many private schools that are more expensive, of course, because the public is free. For the private schools, you will have maybe better teachers, better paid teachers, but it can also be really difficult for everyone to find their place or really judgy for the people that will be a little bit late at learning something. A big problem that we have is that as everything is public, most of the school is public, the teachers are not paid enough. And when the teachers are not paid enough, when they have to work a lot, when you don't have a lot of budget in the school, you have to deal with many problems because not everything is perfect. I remember when I was in high school, most of the buildings in the school were made of plastic, you know, because it was like new building, it looks like a mobile home, like tiny house in a camping, but in a bigger size. But it was like this type of classes. But it creates also a system where many teachers are also tired because they are working a lot and they are not paid enough. So many teachers just stopped making effort in their class, and we can find many bad teachers in the French public system. We can still have a good education because some of the teachers are so good, so talented, so involved, it balanced the bad teachers. I remember at each step of my scholarship, from the elementary school to the university, you could find always like really bad teacher, an excellent teacher. It was not just averagely good. It was really bad or really good. So it can be a bit weird when you have in the same day like a teacher that will change your life and another one that will make no effort. There is a big gap in the school system in France between the big cities like Paris and the region or the suburbs like the countryside. I was born near Paris in the region, like the big area around Paris, and my scholarship was okay. It was not the best, but I found many good teachers that also like changed my life to balance the bad ones. But when I moved to Paris and I had my first apartment in Paris, I discovered people who grew up in really good schools. When you were born in Paris, you can have an high school like the high school of your town, of your district. Your public high school that is free will have the best teacher of France. You will have extremely good classes, you will have a good level in your class, and if you want to be excellent, you can because you have everything for you. After the high school, you can get to what we call the Prepa, the preparation class. It's like 2 years of university that you do not in the university but in the high school to prepare yourself for the big schools, like the big university or the big school, like the difficult class. It's like a preparation university to be excellent. And the Prepa, it's extremely famous. It's difficult because when you are in the Prepa, you don't have any life. It's like being a medical student. Like you don't have any free time. You will work a lot for 2 years and then you can get to really good schools. When you are living in Paris, you hear about the Prepa. Sometimes the Prepa is even in your own high school. So you can just finish high school and still be in your own high school to do the Prepa and then get to really good schools after that. But when you are in the suburbs, when you are in the countryside, people don't talk that much about the Prepa. It's more difficult to access it because you're not living there. So you won't have access to the best preparation class or the best schools. In France, there is like this big gap between the countryside and the city because if you are not living in the city at first, you can't access the best education except if you learn about it on yourself and you prepare yourself to be the best. And this big gap, it was like a violence when I discovered that. When I moved to Paris, I discovered people that were like just naturally talented and cultured because they grew up in this kind of environment. When you were living in Paris, when you are born in Paris, you can access just excellent culture, excellent knowledge, excellent schools, just as a usual school. Like your neighborhood school is excellent. All the best schools are in Paris. And if you were not living in Paris, you don't always know that the schools exist. You don't always know that you can access it. You don't always know that you can access a better education. And I think that this is the biggest thing in the French education system. Not everyone knows what they can access to. Not everyone knows what they deserve. Things are changing a lot right now because many people from the suburbs or countryside are trying to get to really good schools, but it's still difficult to access that schools because many people want to access it. And if you were living in Paris with the best high schools and then the best Prepa, it's easier to get to these schools. Schools or universities like the ENS, the École Normale Supérieure, that is one of the most difficult to access to. Even Macron, the president, failed twice and didn't get in the ENS. Or Polytechnique, for a lot of science, it's extremely difficult to access it too. You can get higher in the social ladder with your school in France, but it's difficult to access really good schools, really good free schools, if you were living in the countryside and you don't even know about it. In Paris, I see many people that were out of these big schools and they became like politicians, artists, writers, famous people in the show business. I want to write, I want to make movies, I want to get also these opportunities that the people from these schools have. And I want to show that it's possible also to learn that even if you were not in these big schools. So I'm gonna try to learn more about all of that and maybe I will make videos about it. Tell me in the comments, how is your school system? Is it the same like with the big schools and the countryside and the suburbs that don't have the best schools? Tell me in the comments what you think about that and if it's the same in your country. And if you want to explore Paris and discover more about the French way of life, you can subscribe to this YouTube channel. I post every single day, so see you tomorrow.